G'day and welcome to Rick Massie Fishing. Today I'm out targeting bream on my local waterway, the Patterson River, or the Patto as it's known. I've lived here now for 8 years and only live 80 metres off the water, and over the years this location has produced some fantastic fishing for me. There's a lot of structure to fish here, and it can be white-knuckled fishing, and you can win some and lose some, but it's one of those locations that does produce some memorable and great black bream fishing. Now let's see how we go. Patterson Lakes is a river and a whole series of canals which are man-made. These canals are home to a lot of bream, and there's a lot of structure in this waterway, from pontoons and jetties through to boat hulls. You have rocky edge shores and also flats that you can fish. Today we'll be targeting those bream, fishing around the pontoons, jetties and boat hulls using Strike Pro Micro Vibes and the new Strike Pro Enticer Crab soft plastics. Once the tide comes up later in the day and the water starts to cover some of those rocky shores and also flats, we'll then start to target the fish using the new Strike Pro Enticer Finesse Grub 2-inch. Now this waterway is very similar to a lot of other waterways across the country, and the techniques that we use here we can use in other waterways around Victoria like Paynesville and Docklands, over in South Australia, West Lakes, and Western Australia on the Murray and the man-made canals there. Sydney you can fish areas like Sylvania Waters, or then you've got the vast man-made canal systems of the Gold Coast. And the techniques that I'm going to use today you can use in any one of those waterways, and generally you'll have quite good success. Now let's see how we go. Things I thought I'd go through with you here is some of the techniques that I use fishing the Patto, and these techniques can be used in all those waterways that I explained at the start. And the micro vibe from Strike Pro is probably my preferred method in here. It's a minute, very small plastic resin vibe. It's only 25mm, just with a little single hook on it. This particular colour in the last few years has really done very well for me. The 883G. It's an exceptional colour with that solid red eye. I change out the hooks from the owner ST11s and put on Daiichi Death Trap treble size 12. I just find that they are a slightly heavier gauge than the ST11. If you run heavier hooks, what has a tendency of doing is then counterbalances the vibe, so you lose a lot of the shimmy action if your hooks are too heavy on the back. So you do need a lighter gauge hook. Unfortunately, using the lighter gauge hooks, in particular around the structure and the pontoons here, as you will have seen with some of the filming that I've been doing, yeah, I've been straightened on a couple of fish today, just not been able to stop them or turn them from getting back into the structure, and you either straighten the hooks or you bust them off if you can't get them out. But that's all part of the fun of fishing. Now, one of the things that I do with this particular lure is you need to fish it very, very slowly. I use in here a lot of the pontoons are concrete pontoon. So what I generally do is I'll sit off the pontoon and I'll actually throw the lure up onto the concrete rather than throw it into the water close to the structure, because I find that spooks the fish. If you throw it up onto the concrete, you can just slowly hop it to the edge and then just drop it very lightly off the lip and as close to the shadows as you can. Now, one of the things that you should be looking for when you're fishing these types of areas is concentrate in fishing shaded areas rather than in bright sunshine. And also think about what the tide's doing. So preferably if you can get the tide running in the same direction as the shade. So if you've got the shade on the backside and you've got a running tide and the tide's pushing that way, the fish will sit at the back of it out of the current, where they can just wait for the food to come past. They're in the shade, so they feel protected, rather than fishing the bright sunshine side, you know, where it's very bright and sunny. In here I find a lot of the fish will be sitting in those shaded areas, so that's just a tip that you can use. One of the other things that you need to do is make sure that your leaders, when you're fishing this type of structure, are quite strong. I find fishing 3 and 4 pound in here, you just lose too many fish. So I use the Strike Pro SFC in a 5 pound. I just find the 5 pound here is a really good size. With this I don't lose as many fish or get busted, but when I've gone to 4 pound and so on, I seem to lose a lot of fish, and when you go to 6 pound you don't seem to get as many strikes or takes, just with the heavier leader material. So 5 pound's a really good optimum level. With the micro vibe as well, what I do is I use this sack scent in the bloodworm. It's a fantastic product, and I smear a little bit of that onto the lure. That just masks the human odour and scent, and also adds a bit of attractant to bring the fish in. And as far as techniques go, is one of the things I find with this lure is when you throw it in and you let it sink down, you've got to watch the line on the drop, because you do sometimes get takes on the drop. But what will happen a lot of the time is it'll sink to the bottom, and I let it sit there for quite a long time. And that's one of the things that beginners and people that are using these lures for the first time don't realise, is when I let it sink to the bottom, I let it sit there for around 20 seconds before I even move it. Now what I see happens a lot of the time is when I throw the lure in and I hop it down, I'm polar in a lot of these fish, and the fish will follow it down. And I think what they do is they tend to follow the lure down to the bottom, and if you let the lure sink to the bottom and then you move it straight away, I think that spooks the fish. They actually move off it, and rather than sit on it. And what happens, I find, when you let it sink to the bottom and sit on the bottom for a length of time, I think a lot of the fish actually, after a while, they get used to it sitting there and they actually come and sit on it. And when you do go to do that first little hop, that's when you feel the weight and the fish is on. So, and I'd say 90% of my fish are caught that way here, and I've also had a lot of success using exactly the same technique in Paynesville, and also did get some fish over in the Murray in Western Australia during the grand final a couple of years ago, in the man-made canals there, doing exactly the same thing. So it has got a bit of versatility, in particular with the Black Bream. Yellowfin, you might want to fish it a little bit quicker, but the Southern Blacks definitely prefer it a lot slower. The other lure I like to use here, apart from the Strike Pro Micro Vibe, is our new Strike Pro Enticer crab. This new soft plastic crab that we've designed and developed, it basically is a dead replica of a small crab, and not just the way that it looks, it is impregnated with scent, so it actually smells like a crab as well. And the plastic material we've used, when we were testing these, the factory sent us many different densities of plastic, and we tested all the different materials to find which one gave the best action. And the material we're using, it's quite a stiff material, but we found with that stiff material is that it actually imparts the best movement and wobble through the legs in particular. So as this little crab's going down, it flutters nicely its legs on the drop and also on the lift. The other thing with the material being a bit stiffer is when the fish do grab it, it's a lot harder, and a crab generally is harder, so it actually feels like a crab for them when they grab it, rather than something very soft and squishy, so that they generally will sit on it and grab it. We rigged this on a new Enticer jig head that's just about to be released onto the market in a size 4. The other thing that I do with these is, when I do rig them, is I dab a little bit of glue on the base of the head as I'm pushing the plastic on. That just helps stop the plastic from rotating or moving, particularly after you're landing quite a few fish. But they've been quite effective in this waterway in the very short time that they've been on the market. And yeah, as you can see, they're very, very detailed. All in all, it was quite a good day out on the water today. Probably landed around 20 good fish, and there was some reasonable fish amongst them, you know, high 30s, but did get straightened a few times by some better fish. That happens when you're fishing around these pontoons and jetties here in locations like Patterson Lakes. And the standout lure today was this little fella here. Definitely was the go-to lure, this Micro Vibe in the 883G. That colour really stood out and caught a lot of fish for me today. Hope you enjoyed today out on the Patto.